Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Window of Opportunity. And this was another boring episode. Granted, there were things that happened, but I'm not digging the writing this season. I don't feel that there's really that much tension, and the dialogue is just kind of there. Because there used to be kind of a back and forth kind of banter, characters acting as more characters rather than uh, my usual complaint of things furthering the plot along. There were some kind of bright spots. We got some more kind of teases of what's going on with Sarge and their group, but of course it's more teasing and enigmatic more than anything. It's kind of just like, oh, we usually kind of see it done this way all these times before, so might as well do it again. So, the three kind of portions of story in this episode deal with Sarge and his group, Mac and his team of people, and then Fitz on his ship. We don't get anything from Simmons and Daisy until towards the end of the episode. And there's only going to be 13 episodes in this season. This is not setting up for a tightly honed story going forward. I understand that Sarge is going to be the bigger kind of factor, but we've got it split between Sarge and then Simmons and Fitz, their whole story. If it had just been one being the focus and just actually going through with it on the storyline, that would be kind of better, but I hate the trend that we need multiple things juggling at once. Granted, I'm always happy to see different kind of things happening, but if you've only got 13 episodes, focus on the one story and make it good rather than having all these things pop up and not devoting enough time and energy into them to make them worthwhile. Like, let's knock out Fitz's right off the bat. He is evidently on this ship just being the engineer department pretty much, and is dealing with this kind of like gang boss dude named Vero or whatnot. Yeah, Vero. And that he made up some bull hockey story of being off of this one planet, so that way they wouldn't look in that he's a Terran. Well, he's like messing with these things, making sure that these slug tanks are working pretty well, because there's Xandarian slugs, well, snails, and they're evidently supposed to be some kind of delicacy. I like the name drop of Xandar from Guardians of the Galaxy, but nothing else is done with it except being a name drop. And they find out that he messed with his eyes and that Enoch's been hiding behind a panel because you're in a ship in space. And of course it would be simple just to hide somebody behind a panel. And they're pretty much xenophobic on him right off the get-go, and they got on this ship to avoid the other ship that cut them in half, so they're still teasing that out, and it's just like, okay, cool, let's see where this kind of goes. But of course Vero pops up like, okay, does his best villainy kind of thing. I'm like, okay, this dude's not gonna last long, and pretty much tasks Fitz with repairing the heat shielding and this airlock, and maybe he'll let him win instead of throwing him out the airlock. He gets everything fixed, and he said he'd work there for free, and he's like, hey, since you guys are going to work for free, I don't need my other crew, and I don't need to pay him, so I'm going to kill him. Makes no sense. It's just mainly trying to put Fitz into a position that the plot demands it. So Vero's about to kill the people, send him out the airlock. Fitz is doing this so that way he can look Jem in the eye again. He's like, fine, puts him in, they hit the button, and Fitz had rigged it so that way the other airlock opens up and sucks out the villain. Almost sucks out Enoch, but he is able to push it open, and they are close to the planet that had created the cryopods, but Fitz decides to go off to another planet because evidently mutineering is a death sentence, so he's going to go drop off the rest of the crew to make sure that they're safe. And that's where at the end of the episode, whoop, right as they are leaving this planet to go to the other planet to drop off the people safely, which was the plot demanded, so that way Fitz wouldn't be there, and thus close off this plot loop pretty much within one episode, which would have been better. We see Daisy and Gemma pop up, and Gemma's like, oh, he's here, I can feel it. And it's like, yeah, you just missed him. So we're going to do the runaround. So that was just like, all right, you're already showing us things that Fitz would already do, and Fitz already knows. You're not really showing us anything really different about his character or his dialogue. Mainly kind of giving us the same also kind of rundown with Enoch. It doesn't really do much to add to his character or Enoch's character. It just adds to lengthen out what's going on and make filler and fill the time, and that's like, oh, come on, you can do it more compelling than that. You've done better stuff than this before, S.H.I.E.L.D. So we also get into Sarge's whole thing, and in the beginning of the episode we see that they are robbing a convenience store, talking about how they've got sugar water with like the Slurpees and all that. They use paper money, and they're still in combustion, saying that this is going to be a pretty easy smash and grab kind of thing. So it's like, okay, that could have been done a little bit better, but that gave us more information and kind of gave us the headspace of where Sarge and the rest of his group were at. So they kind of go up in the truck, and that's got a cloaking mechanism. And we then get into them, into their truck, kind of talking about what they kind of do. We see that the Yako guy is breathing some kind of weird thing, and that one of the other group is kind of pissed off because it's kind of disgusting. But evidently, Yako has not had his home atmosphere in 9 years, and that there's these PEGs that are important. It's like, okay, whatever. That's about it until it starts intersecting with what's going on with Mac and their group, because Mac and their group, they have a eulogy thing for Fox, and it's like, okay, seeing how Mac deals with loss and everything, and he deals with it as a competent leader, and he lets it drop that he knows about Keller and Yo-Yo, and we get their whole kind of scene, and we're supposed to feel for Keller, we're supposed to feel for Fox, but it's just really kind of hollow because we've just been introduced to these characters last episode, and I guess we're trying to feel with Yo-Yo trying to comfort him, but you're just like, okay, whatever. And they get information about, of course, the convenience store, and Sarge conveniently left behind a Slurpee, and that's how they get his DNA and figure out that it is Phil Coulson minus some rad markers and all different kind of things. I'm like, okay, cool. It was just kind of strange how convenient that was for the plot to lay that going on. And of course, there's frickin' conflict between Benson and May, and Mac has to explain to him that, hey, you know how you've got like pain in your life? Well, her pain's walking around with, what we're chasing right now is walking around with her pain as its face, and she's got to deal with that. So chill the hell out, man. It just felt so kind of forced. I'm like, all right, continue on. But they see that they're trying to figure out what their next move is. We see that Sarge and his other dude were just walking around this shipping yard. They tried to pretty much trick a security guard, but they shoot at him instead, and that's kind of where May and Yo-Yo then get into it back to try and figure out what's going on there. But Sarge and the rest of his crew find these PEGs and go to a jewelry store and start to rob it. They get inside, they close themselves inside the safe, and they're trying to look at it. First you think it's like diamonds and all that, but it's not. You're looking for like quartz and topaz. They are, let's see, piezoelectric gems, crystals that are naturally polarized to generate electrical charge under applied mechanical pressure. Yes, that was a line that was said within the show. always be careful when unloading technical jargon on an audience. By no means am I saying people are stupid, but when you essentially have to spell out something like that, or I don't know, spell it out after an episode when you're doing something Game of Thrones, to explain how a character is doing something, you need to look at how you're writing your dialogue. Because since this is a kind of baby candy world to them, and hasn't really been using the same kind of technology they have been, because they use this kind of portal technology from like the Portal game, which was kind of cool. I like that. I'm like, ooh, different kind of way. But Sarge is kind of a hard ass, and they've evidently been replacing crew and everything, and this is kind of how he runs his operation. They get that, and they just start shuffling everything back and forth between there. Of course, May and Yo-Yo and them show up. We've seen that this one girl like killed a lot of people, and we get confirmation here. And they see them in the vault. They see the heat signatures, and May puts two and two together and being like, wait a minute, how is there more heat signatures than before? She then, because again the plot demands it, she goes off on her own and finds the club truck and proceeds to beat the ever-loving shit out of Yako, Beardy Boy, and Butterfly Girl, also called Snowflake. For writing characters, at least, I understand the Snowflake thing, but it's really kind of weird. I'm like, you couldn't have done a little bit better, or at least explain more. Granted, I understand we're 2 episodes in, but again, we've got 13 episodes. You kind of have to move at a better pace, and you have to tighten it up, so that way I can care about this character. But she's going off on the Yako dude, and the Yako dude, I think it would somewhat be analogous to maybe kind of like an Asgardian, because they talked about like Warhammers being dropped on him, and May does have a lot more issues taking him on than the other two. And granted, I like this fight scene. It was a good fight scene. May just kicking ass and taking names. Of course, Sarge was outside of the cloaked truck at this point and was going to test out his mechanical doohickey. But he'd went outside before May came in. It's really convenient. But of course, he comes in. May gets confused and gets thrown back into the vault, but that's when Yo-Yo and the rest of them open it up. And thus, they get away, and they're like, whatever. Let's see. Then we get back to Benson, and he had evidently gotten a chip off of Tinker, which had a biological drive that had a video of Sarge and his crew pretty much starting the destruction of a world or realm or whatnot. And it's like, okay. I understand that's trying to up the stakes and kind of show what's going on and what they try and do. Evidently, they come in and they try and, I guess, take resources or whatnot. They're kind of like an interdimensional or interplanetary crew that just go in and, I guess, take shit. And when they do, they, like, use that machine to destroy the world or whatnot. And I don't have a problem with setting the stakes. It's just this was, again, poorly executed, and executed in a kind of boring manner. I understand that we need stakes in these games, and a world-ending event does kind of work, but then again, we get into the time frame wise of what's been going on with this timeline in the TV and what's been going on in the movies, and they don't kind of balance out. So we'll kind of have to see where this is going, and if they're able to make it a little bit more exciting and a little bit more substantial in the dialogue, because this is kind of crazy. They already did this season, and they've already got the next season lined up and renewed for, and I wish they kind of waited, because this dialogue is not the same as the dialogue that we've been getting in the past seasons. Now, granted, Season 5's quality was a little bit wonky as it was, but I felt that it was more interesting to watch characters talk. And it was a kind of staple of shows like Game of Thrones or Supernatural. You get this banter back and forth, and you would get an easier exchange of information rather than feeling like this character is speaking so that way the audience understands what's going on. Like with Jocko telling us about the crystals. When you jargon up that shit, people kind of tune out, and it's really hard to kind of get them back in. I'm not saying not to do complex explanations and like cool ass new scientific things going on with a show. That's by no means not what I'm talking about. But you've got to make sure that you've got the levels right so that way people are interested and don't automatically tune out something. That's an immediate kind of crazy thing that happens when somebody goes into jargon that they're not familiar with. Because it's either one of two things. You're trying to make yourself seem smarter and thus they're like, this is an information that's interested to me, or you're trying to intentionally kind of confuse someone to the point where they just give up. So we'll kind of have to see what goes on. Hopefully the whole Fitz and Gemma thing gets wrapped up. From the way this is being pointed out, this is supposed to be a main kind of issue until maybe halfway through the season, and the whole team is back together and needed to stop Coulson. Well, Sarge, who he was called Coulson by May, and he said it did kind of ring something, so we'll have to see how that's going to work out, if this is like a clone or another Coulson from another dimension, or how that's all going to be resolved, if that's the way we're getting Coulson back into the show. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.